In the valley of Elah, where the morning mist still clung to the earth, two armies stood facing one another, Israel on one hill, the Philistines on the other, and between them lay a silence heavy with fear. Every dawn began the same, the sound of armor clattering, the echo of boots on stone, and then the roar. A voice that shook the ground and the hearts of men. It was Goliath, a giant of Gath. Over 9 feet tall, clad in bronze from head to toe, his spear like a weaver's beam, his shadow stretching far across the valley. "Send out your champion," he bellowed. "Let him fight me. If he defeats me, we will serve you. But if I defeat him, you will serve us." 40 days he came, morning and evening, mocking, laughing, daring anyone to face him. And for 40 days, the army of Israel trembled. Not one man stepped forward. Not Saul, their king. Not the soldiers trained from youth. Fear had become their master. But one morning, far from the battlefield, a shepherd boy was tending his flock. His name was David, the youngest of 8 sons, sent only to bring bread and cheese to his brothers at the front. He arrived just as Goliath's laughter thundered again. The boy froze, not in fear, but in disbelief. He looked around. Every soldier lowered their eyes. Every man hid behind another. David whispered, "Who is this man who dares to defy the armies of the living God?" They laughed at him. "You're just a boy," they said. "Go home. You don't know what you're saying." But David's heart burned, not with pride, with faith. He went before King Saul and said, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul looked at him with pity. "You cannot fight him. You are but a youth, and he a warrior from his youth." David answered softly, "When I kept my father's sheep, a lion came and took a lamb from the flock. I went after it and struck it down. When a bear came, I did the same. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "Go, and the Lord be with you." They tried to put armor on David, a bronze helmet, a heavy coat, a sword, but the boy could barely move. He took them off and said quietly, "I cannot wear what does not fit my faith." He took his staff, chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, placed them in his shepherd's pouch, and with only his sling in hand, walked down into the valley. The Philistine laughed when he saw him. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods and roared, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air." But David's eyes did not waver. He called back, "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, whom you have defied." Goliath began to move forward, each step shaking the ground beneath him. David ran to meet him, his sling already in motion. The world seemed to hold its breath. The stone left his sling, cutting through the air like a whisper. And then, silence. The giant staggered, eyes wide in disbelief, and fell forward, face to the earth. The ground trembled, the army gasped, and for a moment, the valley of fear became a valley of faith. David stood still. His chest rose and fell. The stone had done what no sword could. Because it was never about strength, it was about trust. He took Goliath's sword and raised it high. The Philistines fled, their confidence shattered, their giant fallen. But David did not smile in triumph. He knelt. He whispered, "The battle is the Lord's." And so, the shepherd became a warrior. A boy became a legend. And a single act of courage became a timeless story of faith conquering fear. Even today, our giants do not always stand 9 feet tall. They come as fear, doubt, sickness, loss, voices that whisper, "You can't win." But remember David. Remember the boy who saw not the size of the enemy, but the size of his God. Faith does not remove fear. It walks through it. Faith does not need a sword. It only needs a heart that believes. When your battles seem too great and your strength too small, listen to the stillness of that valley. You'll hear the echo of a sling, the sound of courage taking aim. And in that moment, you'll know Even the smallest stone can change the course of giants. The sun rose higher over the valley of Elah. The air shimmered with heat, and the dust clung to the sandals of every soldier. All eyes turned toward the boy walking alone into the valley. His frame small, his step steady, his sling hanging loosely at his side. Goliath stood waiting, his laughter rolling across the plain like thunder. He towered above the boy, bronze glinting under the light. "Is this what Israel sends against me?" he shouted. "A child with a stick and stones?" But David did not stop. Each step forward echoed louder than the giant's mockery. The closer he came, the stronger his faith grew. His heart beat not with fear, but with fire. He remembered the nights beneath the stars, the quiet voice of God whispering through the wind, the courage that came not from power, but from presence. He reached the small stream that ran through the valley, the only sound that dared to move in the silence of war. Kneeling, he placed his hand into the water and chose 5 smooth stones, each one shaped by years of flow and patience. He held them in his palm. They were light, ordinary, but to him they were more than weapons. They were promises, reminders that God had never failed him before. He slipped them into his pouch and looked up. Goliath was moving now, his massive shield-bearer before him, his armor clanging like a storm of iron. The ground trembled beneath his steps, but David's gaze stayed fixed on heaven. For his strength was not in the sling, but in the one who guided his hand. Goliath roared, "Come here, boy. I will feed your flesh to the birds of the air." And David answered, "You come to me with sword and spear and shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, whom you have defied." As he spoke, a wind rose suddenly across the valley. The dust swirled, and the soldiers watched in silence, their hearts torn between doubt and wonder. David reached into his pouch, took one stone, and placed it into his sling. He took a step forward, then another, his breath steady, his mind still. The giant raised his spear. The boy raised his hand. And for a heartbeat, the whole world seemed to pause. The sling turned once, then twice. And on the third swing, the stone left his hand. It cut through the air like light breaking the dark. The sound was almost nothing, a whisper against the roar of battle. But in that whisper, heaven moved. The stone struck the giant's forehead, sinking deep into the flesh. The laughter stopped. The taunts died in his throat. And for a heartbeat, time itself forgot to breathe. Goliath staggered, his shadow wavering, his knees buckling beneath his weight. Then, like a collapsing mountain, he fell face down to the ground. The earth shook with the fall. Dust rose like smoke from a broken altar. The Philistines froze in disbelief. The Israelites stood still, unable to speak, unable to comprehend. A boy had done what armies could not. David walked forward, silent, each step echoing in the emptiness left by fear. He stood over the fallen giant, eyes calm, hands steady. He reached for Goliath's sword, so large it took both arms to lift. He raised it high, and the sun flashed across the blade like a second dawn. When the sword fell, the cry of the Philistines rose with it, a wave of panic rolling across the valley. They fled. The soldiers of Israel, once trembling, now surged forward with shouts of victory. But David did not shout. He did not smile. He knelt beside the still giant and whispered, "The battle is the Lord's." The wind carried his words across the hills, through the trembling fields, and into the hearts of every man who heard. Later, when the noise of war faded, David stood alone at the edge of the valley. The sun was setting, turning the dust into gold. He looked down at his hands, one still holding the sling, the other open and empty. He thought of the flock he had once guarded, the songs he had sung to calm their fear, and he realized nothing had changed. He was still a shepherd, only now the flock was larger. He gazed at the horizon and whispered, "Faith is not the absence of fear. It's the courage to move while afraid." The valley of Elah grew quiet once more. But in its silence, a new sound was born, the heartbeat of courage. For generations, they would tell his story. not because a boy killed a giant, but because faith proved greater than fear. The stone was small, the boy was smaller, but the God behind him was infinite. And now, when you face your own giants, the ones no one else can see, remember this valley. Remember the boy who carried 5 smooth stones and only needed one. Because true victory never comes from strength. It comes from the hand that dares to believe. And in every heart that still believes, the sling still swings, the stone still flies, and the giant still falls. And long after the dust of that valley settled, the story of David still walked through generations. Fathers told it to their sons, mothers whispered it to their children at night. The tale of a boy who believed when others bowed to fear. Because faith is not born in comfort. It is forged in the face of what seems impossible. And every time the world says, "You can't," the voice of that shepherd still answers, "Watch me try." So when your heart trembles, when the battle looks too great, remember, God still chooses the small, the humble, the unseen, to remind the mighty where power truly comes from. The sling may have fallen silent, but faith still flies. And in every soul that dares to trust, a new stone is still taking flight.